Well, I think we can let people jump on in as we keep going. So, welcome everyone. I'm happy to see you all on the call this morning. So, APAS, last winter, we passed a resolution looking at, what is the farm share of the food dollar. So with that, we went and hired Kevin Grier. So Kevin did the base analysis for this entire project that we published at our AGM this fall. So it's been a lot of work and a long time coming, but a lot of really great research and analysis that was done in there. So the report that was published in the fall was entirely based off of Kevin's work. So he was a really key piece of that. So we thought we'd bring him in today so that he can explain a little bit of the methodology and the background behind kind of how those numbers were created, and then answer any questions that you guys might have. So just a couple basic housekeeping things. Please keep yourself on mute, keep your camera off so that everybody is able to kind of maintain good internet connection. If you've got any questions, you can enter them into the chat box or use the raise hand function and we can answer those questions as we go along. With that, Kevin, I will pass it over to you to get rolling.
Okay, thank you, Erin. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, so as Erin said, I did a paper for APAS, and it was, I guess, distributed in the summer. And I think what I'm going to do is just a very short presentation, and then if there's questions, we can deal with the questions. So all that I'm going to do is to show you why the project was done. And again, I'm dealing with people that know the history behind it. I'll tell you about the methodology of how the work was done, and we'll go over the farm shares of the products that I was asked to do, and then some conclusions or summary points that I got from doing the work. So the purpose of doing it, farm share of retail has got a long history. My knowledge of the concept goes back probably 40 years. There was a paper done by a politician in the 80s called about the farm share, compare the share it was called. So and plus APAS did some work with other farm organizations about 10 years ago on the farm share, and so farmers are always interested in what the farm share of the retail product's been. So there's a long history there. In particular, during the last couple of years, with food inflation skyrocketing and all the media attention given to food inflation, it's been more in focus now, and farmers across the country, I think, have an interest in showing consumers in the media that the farm share of it is very, very small, and so farmers wanted to be known more about what exactly the farm share. So the reason for its interest is in the last couple of years is very clear, given the food inflation. Farmers want people to know what the causes of food inflation are, and so APAS wanted to generate a farm share data and provide perspective on that. I was asked to do 8 particular items. We'll go over what they are and with the work. So in terms of the methodology, the 8 selected items were lentils, bread, beer, flour, canola oil, margarine, beef, and pork. I told APAS or Aaron that I could do the job up to a certain point. I wanted to use the USDA's Economic Research Service methodologies, because there's a long history of ERS, Economic Research Service, doing this kind of work. It's well known, it's been published, it's been vetted by academics and so on. So I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. That would have been a huge undertaking. Everybody respects, I believe, the ERS work, and so I told Aaron that I wanted to use that. Unfortunately for me, there were 3 products that ERS didn't do that APAS wanted: beer, ERS doesn't do beer. They do soybean oil, but they didn't do canola oil, so I had to do research on that, and lentils. So ERS research methodologies were used for bread, flour, margarine, beef, and pork. And I had to do research with people in the industry on the prairies in terms of getting some help on beer, canola oil, and lentils. So that's the basic overview of the methodology. In terms of the prices, basically the main prices that we're interested in are the retail price and the farm commodity price. For example, if we're looking at flour, we'd be interested in flour, the retail price of flour, and the farm price of wheat. If we're interested in looking at pork at retail, we're interested obviously in the basket of pork products, whether they're chops or bacon, and the price of hogs. All of the price data that I used was Statistics Canada. For the retail prices, I used the Consumer Price Index. Again, that's reported monthly. StatsCan has a basket of food products that they use and collect, and they do it by across the country and in each individual province. So I used StatsCan food prices for Saskatchewan. The ones that weren't available, I think it was just beer that StatsCan doesn't do, so I have to find other sources for the retail price of beer in Saskatchewan. But in terms of the farm product prices, again, I use StatsCan data. So that's why did I use StatsCan data? Because it's available, it's widely published, it's vetted, so, and plus it's consistent with the farm product prices. So they're there for all to see with Stats Canada at the retail level and at the farm level. Then there were conversion factors, and again, for the most, I use the Economic Research Service. Conversion factor basically means how much of the commodity is in the food product. There's a lot that goes into that, but that's the fundamental premise. How much farm product goes into that food product, and then once you determine the conversion factor, then the share is basically the farm share in that food product divided through by the retail price, and that gives you the percentage. That percentage. So that's basically the methodology. Again, relying on ERS, and where I couldn't rely on ERS, I asked industry experts at the canola associations or at the malting associations, that sort of thing, for some help in terms of the conversion factors and the methodology. So I did 8 farm products share, and so I'm going to go over just 3 of them to give you a feel for how it was done, and then I'm going to show you after that the 8 farm shares all over. But again, I just want to go over 3 in terms of the basic methodology. The first one I want to show you is beef, and again, in Saskatchewan in 2022, the average value of beef that I calculated was $20.22 a kilogram. According to Canfax, the farm value of on average for Saskatchewan or for the prairies was $173 in 2022. The conversion factor, according to the Economic Research Service (ERS), was that it takes about 2.4 units of cattle to produce 1 unit of retail. 2.4 units of the cattle to produce 1 unit of the retail beef. And the retail beef is all the beef items that are sold at retail, a representative retail package of products that are sold. So the net farm value of the cattle or the beef within the beef retail was $8.19. So the farm share of the retail of the $20.22 was $8.19 divided by 2022. Okay, so the farm share in 2022 was 41%. Okay, That was pretty close to what the ERS had for the US as well. But in these will vary by years, but in 2022, that's what it was. Now, let's compare that to pork. Retail value in Saskatchewan in 2022 was $14 a kilogram. The hog value for Saskatchewan, according to Stats Can, was $1.96. Now the conversion factor is it takes about 1.87 units, or let's say kilograms, or 1.87 units of that farm animal into the 1 unit of that retail product. Okay, so the net farm value was $3.33 per kilogram once you do that conversion, and then the farm share was 24%. So $334 divided by $1,406 is 24%. Now this is interesting because the farm share of pork is much less for hogs than it is for cattle, and that's because so much more of the hog is processed. Okay, probably about more than half of the hog is processed into bacon, hams, lunch meats, that sort of thing. So I think the reason why I wanted to show cattle and pork and hogs was because of the processing methods. Again, the farm share of beef was 41%. The farm share of pork was just 24%. Again, why the difference? Because so much more of the animal is processed. The more that the farm product is processed, the lower the farm share is going to be. Okay. The third one I wanted to show you, just again as an example, was canola oil. And again, as I mentioned earlier, ERS, Economic Research Service, doesn't do canola oil. So I had to get the help of canola associations and oil seed associations to help me with some of the arithmetic here in the conversion factors. So the retail value of the canola oil in Saskatchewan was $3.60 a liter. The farm value of the canola was $955 a ton. Then there's a lot of conversions that go into this. The canola seed into crude oil, and you would go from the crude to the refined oil. You have to consider the oil density. And basically the message was 1 liter of oil from 2.15 kilograms of seed. And again, lots of arithmetic gymnastics to get you there. The net farm value of the seed within the canola oil, within that bottle of canola oil, was $1.51. So the farm share was $1.51 divided by 360, which was about 40%. So those are 3 examples of what I did: beef, pork, and canola oil. The net result, again, was summary I wanted to show you of the 8 was beef had about 41, beer had less than 5%. There's a lot of processing, a lot of different costs into that retail product that have nothing to do with barley. Flour was about 25%. Bread was about 7%. Again, I showed you canola oil. Lentils was about 25, 26. Margarine, and that was mostly soybeans, less than 15%. And you saw the pork at about 20, 24. So those are the 8 products, and those are the net results for those 8 products. My conclusions really was that the farm share is larger for less processed products. So, you know, if you want to know how big or small the farm share is going to be, tell me how much processing goes into it and other cost that goes into it. Again, you've got really, with beef, very little processing. You know, most of the beef products that we eat are fresh beef. The only processing that goes on for beef that come to my mind would be corned beef. The brisket gets processing there, but most of the beef that we eat is is really very little processing at all. So the farm share is going to be larger. The canola oil is another one. Very little processing goes into that. In other words, there's not a lot of derivative process. It's simply canola oil, so that the farm share will be larger. And I love, like I say, the pork versus beef, because again, so much more of pork is processed compared to beef. So my other conclusion really is generalizations are difficult. That, you know, if you ask me to do this for beef in this year, I think the beef share per farm would be higher. But again, it all depends on supply and demand. So those are that's really what I did, and I guess what I could do now is just turn it back to Aaron.
Thanks, Kevin. That's gives us a really good overview of kind of how the math was done kind of behind everything like that. So I will open it up for questions, and if no one's got one to start us off, I've got a few myself. So give it a couple moments here. Jim.
I want to know, he used $955 a ton for canola. Where does that price come from? Is that Saskatchewan at the farm, or is that a whole export market price?
That's the Statistics Canada's official price at the farm.
Thank you.
Looks like Don Connick might have a question.
Don,
yes, I was just wondering, on again the retail price of canola oil. I think you had it at $3.15 a liter, and I think it's really much higher now. At least my observations in the store is that it's probably around $8 a liter, and so this would really throw this relationship out of whack, and that's the problem with this, is that
when you say this is the Saskatchewan canola price was a product that was sold in 3-liter bottles. So I just whatever 3 times 360 was the actual retail price of the product. So are you thinking about the price per liter, or are you thinking about the price per bottle? And I'm not arguing with you. I just want to be sure that we're talking apples to apples.
Yeah, and I'm not really talking about a liter necessarily, because often in the stores it's confusing because it's not sold by the liter. It's 955 milliliters or something like that. So it does make the comparison difficult. And I guess the point really that I'm making is that just a minor change in the retail price of the product or the farm value of the product can really change this percentage.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. You more to that point, in 2021, the farm share of beef would have been much lower than the 41% share that I showed for 2022. So I agree with you, Don. It's that's why I think one of my conclusions was it's hard to generalize. But yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Jim, another question?
Want to come back to that $955 a ton. A year and almost 2 years ago now, the price, the best price at our elevators here was $25 a bushel, which is about $1,100 a ton. But the average price was a very particular time. $955 equals about 40, about 22 bucks a bushel. And unfortunately, most of us farmers, a lot of us still think in bushels. But today's price is around $14 or $15 a bushel. And that's more reflective of the previous 10 years than the $22 or $9.55 that you've used. So I'm just saying the period did include prices as high as $25 a ton, but it was exceptional for a very short period of time. And I think it could be revised to in the neighborhood of $15 to $17 a ton to more reflect the average over the last 10 years.
Yeah, so the share would be much lower is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I think I can speak to that one too a little bit here, Jim. So when we did this study, we specifically asked to look at a 2022 average, and then with the assumption that we would hopefully be able to create annual averages as we move forward. So this is 2022 was definitely a time of some very interesting prices. So we understand that some of these numbers may look very idealized when you look at prices that farmers were receiving for their commodities. But we also understand that that was 1 year and that things are going to be very different this year and next year, or if you look at a 10-year average. So that is something that we hope to kind of be able to pull together in the background and be able to offer a bigger picture. But for 2022, that's where the numbers came from.
And 2022 was an outlier, a tremendous outlier.
Yeah, it was. That's the trouble, Aaron. In some respects, coming out of the the unusual, strange period of 2020 to 2021 with the COVID and everything. It was a strange and peculiar time. But yeah, like it is what it is. That's what it was in 2022.
Don.
Jim and I must be the only ones on this call. Again, I was just wondering, both to Aaron and to Kevin, have we gotten much feedback from this, either from the general public or from APAS reps? Have we gotten either positive or negative feedback from this report?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. And I know a couple of my other APAS colleagues are on the call. So if you've got anything to add, feel free to jump in. But I feel like the reception that we've got is that we're happy to have the data. We're happy that we have the methodology to be able to kind of continue looking into these numbers into the future and start to get a bigger picture. But definitely that some of those 2022 numbers seem awful high. So that's kind of the response that I've really felt.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Kevin, I'll hop in with one of my questions here. So looking at the beef data, can you describe a little bit more for me where the farm price for cattle came from? Is that at a farm gate level or at a finished feedlot level?
The cattle data was one of the few that didn't come from StatsCan. It came from CanFax. Live basis is FOB, the feedlot. So it's, I think you mentioned some were interested in whether or not this was feeder cattle. No, it's not feeder cattle. It is FOB, the feedlots. It's finished cattle, and that is CanFax, which is Western Canada, and so it's close to what a typical, if there's such a thing anymore, typical feedlot in Saskatchewan would have sold the cattle for in 2022. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll give it a second and see if anyone else pops up in the group here, or I'll go with another one. So, James.
Yeah, and I hope you didn't already address this, but is there any indication, going back to the canola example, the price of canola on farm has dropped a great deal from that, and I guess the interesting thing will be the stickiness of retail prices. And is there any indication yet in the 23 year, or do you have any of that data that would give an indication of whether retail price of canola oil has been moving with the price of canola? Because that will, sorry, that will be an important part of this going forward, how sticky the retail prices are once they reach a point.
Yeah, that's a fascinating, that's, I think what Aaron's talking about is, continuing for the staff to continue to do this, and that would be really interesting to see. I haven't looked at the canola pricing. I'm much more, I guess you could say, hands on in terms of the livestock pricing. That has been, as you say, sticky. Prices have been staying up. I think for the most part, retailers are reluctant to lower prices on the beef and pork until they're sure that prices are going to fall. So there hasn't been a lot of downward movement on beef, and I wish I could say I looked at canola, but I didn't. But your question is very, very relevant.
So I did do a quick check on canola on some of the products back in November, and I didn't take any averages. I just kind of took the November data that was available. And from what I could see, canola oil prices continued to rise like another 3%, whereas canola, like off the farm, dropped about 21%. So it doesn't seem like they're too related based on those numbers.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so again, more evidence that the share, if you did it for 2023 or whatever, the share would be much less than the 41% that I got.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Something like beef versus canola oil, people may have very different reactions to prices staying up, or even what they notice in the grocery store. Each individual commodity or each individual product will, consumers will probably react differently to. And oil may be a kind of a background one that once the price goes up, they may just accept it more than very high beef prices.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that, but it could be.
Well, again, 2022, if you have 2022 is an obvious year to do this because of all the media about food inflation, but it was also again a year where, to be honest, of commodity prices were quite high. So I hear all you're saying is maybe 2022 was not a representative year.
So I've got a question in the chat here, Kevin, that says, we talk farm share, but we are also using feedlot prices. So what is the actual farm share for the cow-calf producer?
Well, I don't know. I didn't do that. I didn't do that for the cow-calf or for the calf. Ultimately, everything good or bad in the beef industry comes and settles at the cow-calf level. So, with that said, all I can say is that the cattle share of beef in 2022 was that 41%. To get it back to your level, I would have to give that a lot of thought. All I'm saying is that the finished product and the finished product for beef and the finished product for cattle in 2022 was that 41%. To go back to your level, I'd have to give that a lot of thought in terms of what it means to you. But again, all good things and all bad things ultimately end up going back to the cow-calf sector. And for the most part, there's been a lot of bad going back to the calf sector prior to 2023, and hopefully in the next few years, according to what we're seeing, a lot of good will be going back to the cow-calf sector in 2024 through to 2025. In fact, the Livestock Marketing Information Center in the United States is projecting some very, very positive returns to the cow-calf sector in the coming years. So hopefully that'll come to fruition.
Okay, another one from the, oh, sorry, no, okay. Another one from the comment section here. This one, just looking for any comments that you might have, Kevin. So the food processor makes a big issue of shrinkflation and skimpflation, meaning smaller packages at higher prices in grocery stores. So any comments?
Okay, say that again, Aaron, please.
For sure. So food processors are making big issues of shrinkflation and skimpflation, where they have smaller packages at higher prices in grocery stores. So how would that affect some of these farm shares?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it would. It's happening, but in all that means is that the retail price is going up per unit, and so therefore that would result in a lower farm share. Assuming all things being the same, it's just a way of really trying to pass on a higher price without actually putting it up. So yeah, I mean, the one that comes to mind was for me was back in 2014 when we had PED in the United States in the hog industry, and prices went crazy. That's when most manufacturers went to, instead of a 500-gram pack of bacon, they went to 375. So that's the best example of shrinkflation that I can think of, but it's happening again. So ultimately, that would result in a smaller farm share.
Oh, and sorry, I made a mistake here. So the food professor, not the food processor.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. The food professor, that's the Sylvain Charlevoix, I think. Yeah. Yeah, that makes more sense. I didn't really understand the food processor part.
That's my bad reading this morning. So okay, I'll throw another one in here as we let people gather any final thoughts. But so the methodology really bases itself off of those conversion factors from the ERS of how many units of a farm product does it take to create 1 unit of retail product. Do you think those conversion factors change fairly often or not with any real regularity?
I'm thinking. Again, it's hard to generalize. As technology changes, as plants and processes become more efficient, I suppose those methodologies or those conversion factors would change. ERS keeps up to date on it. They publish it all the time. So Aaron, I think that you would have to say that those conversion factors would be, as of 2022, would be representative of what is accepted by the industry. How those conversion factors compare to, say, 10 or 15 years ago, I would again think it would depend on the industry. More processed, I would imagine the conversion factors would change. With beef, for example, how much would it really change? You know, so I don't know, but I don't think we should worry too much about the accuracy or how representative they are for 2022, because again, they're published, they're open, and they are updated. But I think that's a great question. It's a technology question, I suppose, as opposed to anything else.
So we've got two more comments in the chat here. One I think is just kind of a comment. So stating the obvious, 1 year snapshot, while interesting, will be far more useful, valuable as more years of data are analyzed. And hopefully this is the plan going forwards or backwards in time. So yes, I think that's definitely the plan for APAS, as we do hope to be able to kind of continue this process. Kevin was completely instrumental in being able to formulate this methodology, but from here on out, we should be able to kind of bring in new numbers and keep things going forward. So, and then another one is that the livestock price insurance has a program where producers can report their weekly fed cattle prices to AFSC to incorporate into their pricing data. Maybe AFSC would share cattle price data. I'm not sure where they get the rest of their data from, or if there would be a better data source to reflect that price. So an interesting comment on trying to find some of that true farm gate cattle pricing.
Well, as time goes on, it's the cattle price is probably going to get more and more opaque as opposed to transparent. Still, I think the best that we've got is Canfax reporting from its members. So maybe that suggestion, as time goes on and there's fewer and fewer cattle traded openly, maybe that suggestion would be something that needs to be followed up upon.
Don, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Kevin, did we choose the right commodities to test, or are there other important commodities that we've missed in this study? Are there some perhaps more graphic examples that we should have been using? What was missed out here, or did we do a pretty good job of selecting the cross section of commodities that are indicative of the price differences?
Yeah. You picked commodities that were representative of Saskatchewan agriculture. I think you didn't pick some basics such as potatoes, but again, it's not a big product for Saskatchewan. You didn't pick dairy products. I think that's one that you could think about. Again, how big is dairy in Saskatchewan? I imagine it's important to your members. You didn't pick chicken or eggs either. Those are certainly important for consumers. But beyond that, certainly when I think about Saskatchewan, the 8 products that you got are representative of the consumer products that are important to the farm. Again, wheat, barley, cattle, hogs, the lentils, the canola. So, I don't think I would change those. Because they're important to APAS members. In terms of, again, the consumer basket, you don't have fruits and vegetables, but again, how important is that in terms of Saskatchewan agriculture? So I don't know how to answer that question, Don. I certainly understand why they were chosen. And of course, you can always say, well, there should be more. Certainly, I don't know if I answered your question, Don, but I certainly understand why they were chosen, and they represent Saskatchewan to me. But I guess I should leave it at that. I get it, and I understand it, and I'll just maybe I'll leave it at that.
Wonderful. Well, with that, oh, sorry, Don, go ahead.
No, thanks for that, Kevin. And I guess the only one, would be some of the commodities that have marketing boards, and milk is one of them. And we actually had the milk boss from one of the local Hutterite colonies talking to us here just last week, and he makes a very good case for the milk marketing board, in terms of food safety and consistency of price. So, and again, in the future, that might be one we consider. But I agree. I think we've done a good job of selecting the commodities that are produced here in Saskatchewan, and of defending the prices there. So thank you.
All right, with that last question, I think, Brent, okay, final one, here we go.
Sorry, I just had a quick question, Kevin, to kind of build off of Don's question. So we were looking at the farmer share of the food dollar, but we also know that Saskatchewan's products are made into things such as biofuels and sort of non-food related products. Do you have any thoughts or comments on that side of this equation as well? Thank you.
Well, I think it could be done, obviously. I'm sure that they are, the biofuel associations and processors would have the ratios and yields and so on. So I can't think of any reason why it couldn't be done if you think that it's important and representative of what your members produce. So I can't think of any reason why not, Brent.
Thank you.
Alrighty, before I try to end it, any last final questions? Okay, I'll move forward then. Thank you so much, Kevin, for your time today. Thank you everyone for hopping on and asking some really great questions. We will be sending out the recording of this webinar this afternoon in our update email, so feel free to give that a watch if you missed parts of this or needed to revisit anything. And if you have anyone interested that wasn't able to make it this morning, shoot it their way. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon and a great new year. Thank you.
Thank you.